Dad, I'm not going to go to college. And he said, really? I said, really? He said, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with yourself? I said, I'm going to go and work in technology. He says, really? He says, what do you know about technology? I said, not a damn thing, but I'm going to learn it. I know people. And he says, Rob, for goodness sakes, you're not even 20 years old. You don't know people. And he wasn't wrong, okay? But I was so defiant. So I said to him, well, I'm going to figure it out, Dad. And he said, Rob, if you do not go to college, you will be the biggest disappointment in my life. Imagine your father saying that to you.
Wow.
Ralph, I got up. I looked at him. My lip was quivering. I said, Dad, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I turned my back on my father and left his house. Wow. I grabbed the door, and in my head, I said, what the hell are you doing? Just go to college. But here's the situational awareness that I had. My dad never went to college. My dad never graduated high school. He had to do it the old-fashioned way. His school was the school of hard knocks, right? And he just wanted better for his son. So fast forward 30 years now. I'm boarding an airplane coming home to Houston from Rio. My dad calls me. He said, Rob, I just had dinner with your wife and your son. My son was a baby at the time. I said, thanks, Dad. I'm glad someone's having dinner with my family. I'm out of the country, right? He said, I want you to know how proud I am of you. And I said, wow. I mean, my eyes welled up, my voice cracked. I said, really? He says, I am. I said, Dad, do you know what's so ironic about this? He says, I know. I said, do you remember the last thing you said to me 30 years ago when I got up from your kitchen table? He says, I do. He said, you proved me wrong. Wow. And boy, that was so powerful. Now here's one other thing, and we talk about accolades, and this is a cool thing for me. This is where those accolades mean something, because there's people behind us that got us to where we are. My dad was one of those forces. I happen to have been blessed by being one of a select few people that was on the Wall Street Journal Tech Council. So I was part of that council, and a couple of times a year they publish a full page ad with all of the names of the people, the leaders that are framing technology for the future. My dad has one of those framed in his office.
Wow. That's a great story, Rob. I will tell you, man, one of the things that brings to mind for me, and I tell folks this story who have that kind of, because we all have some element of that in our childhood, right? And I remember there's a story, and Ralph, you'll appreciate this, because I heard the story from Joel Osteen, and he said that he was talking about his dad, and his dad was really trying to do something different, similar to you. And years later, of course, he's successful, whatever. And he was still thinking about, man, my dad did this and that. And he said, God spoke to his heart and said, look, your dad did the best he could with what he had. Could you have done better? And looking at it with that framework, right? Because you understand that no matter where I am and what I've done, at the end of the day, I'm standing on Willie George Baylor Sr.'s shoulders. There's no doubt about that. I'm standing on Maddie Baylor's shoulders, right? Because of the platform that they created for us to launch from, man. I really appreciate you sharing this story. And I hope that our listeners, if you're in a similar situation like that, just the amount of gratitude and grace in that story, both ways, right? There's amount of gratitude and grace both ways, Rob. So I really appreciate you sharing that story, man. And there's always a segment that we're going to talk about this. So look, God is great. And man, he ushered in a tool called forgiveness. Bro, let's all of us, sisters, brothers, let's all exercise that tool, man. It is one of the most valuable tools in humanity. So let's exercise that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on that. Myself, there was a point in time as a man that I came to that same conclusion that Rob came to. We tend to pattern our lives based on what we think we didn't have. when we were young, or based on who didn't support us. And, I was just telling my wife this story this morning, how when I graduated high school, my dad was like, I'm not paying for you to go to college. You need to get a blue collar job.
Yeah.
Right. But it didn't hit me until later. Same thing with Rob, that he was doing the best he knew how to do. And really, he was doing better than the generation before him. So he was trying to get
Yes.
me to have the same success. He wasn't trying to limit me. He was basically giving me advice based on what he knew and his
Yes.
experiences, right?
Yes.
And Rob, same thing. Years have gone by, and I've been able to achieve a few things, and he would just tell me all the time, how proud of me he is, right? And I had to learn, and this is the point that I just really want to make for all the listeners out there who are holding a judgment, or someone who has spoken something negative over you in the past. You don't know what that person was going through that made them say what they said, right? And you have to give them grace, to Terry's point, and forgiveness, right? Because they were probably doing the best they could with what they had, right? So I don't want to miss that point, because that was big for me. It was big for me in my development as a man, to say he wasn't trying to hold me back. He was only trying to help me based on what he knew. So Rob, thank you for sharing that, man. That really
Great
blessed me.
story. I love it.
Yeah.
Ralph, one thing you said that resonated with me there, and I learned this lesson as well along the way. And this is a really in your face comment, so just hang with me for the moment. So when someone speaks badly about us, you're exactly right. We have no sense for what's happening in their lives at that moment in time. But let's just say it doesn't matter what's happening necessarily. It's really not our business what people think of us at the end of the day, right? The only thing we can control is how we respond to them, not how they react and what they do. That's on them.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Terry and I have said that same thing on this podcast. It doesn't matter what happened to you or what somebody said about you. The only thing that matters is how you choose to respond.
Yes.
Because that is 100% in your power to control.